election results. I'm Chief Political Correspondent Ian Welfley, and we are so excited to get started tonight. Breeze TV has been traveling all around the state for the past 2 months to provide extensive coverage of this Virginia election. To give you a full overview of the production tonight, we'll be giving a tour of the workspace that we'll be working in throughout the evening with our camera operator here. So currently we are in the Election Center, where we have a myriad of student journalists working tirelessly to track state results throughout the evening in order to provide our viewers with real-time election results. And if you'll follow me to the control room over here, you'll be able to spot all the hard work that goes into making Breeze TV the esteemed program that it is. So if you'll follow me down the hall here, everyone is currently setting up for a show which will start at 8:30. And as you can see, we have students directing, technical directing, running graphics, running sound, running prompter. All these exceptionally talented students will be the brains behind all the live shots and footage that you will see throughout the evening. And if you'll finally follow me into the studio here, we have our workspace that you'll be seeing for the evening. We have our anchors over at the desk. That's where our panel is going to be throughout the evening. That's where I'll be sitting and delivering results to you. And there's our always trusty camera operators right there. Folks, it's shaping up to be an exciting evening. Stick around, you won't want to miss it.
Live from the Allison B. Parker Studio in the School of Media Arts and Design, Breeze TV presents live coverage of the 2021 Virginia Gubernatorial Election.
Good evening, JMU, and welcome to a special election edition of Breeze TV. I'm Craig Allison.
And I'm Shelby Walker.
We'll be your anchors for this evening alongside our chief political correspondent, Ian Welfley. This marks the first ever governor's election that Breeze TV will provide live coverage for. I couldn't be more excited to be at the forefront of it. And Shelby, how are you feeling?
I am so excited, Craig. I mean, we've been watching our politics team cover all of the local elections and the governor's election all semester, and I'm just excited to see what they have in store for us tonight.
All righty, well, I'm excited myself. How about you, Ian?
Well, Greg, frankly, it's going to be a crazy night. I couldn't be prouder of all the hard work Breeze TV has put in these past few months to make my team's coverage of the state election possible, because one of my biggest goals this semester was to showcase how much local politics matter. While the media frequently sheds light on national elections, it's the state and local elections that most directly impact us. And that's why personally following this race has been more exciting to me than the entire 2020 presidential election. And Breeze TV Politics is honored to say that throughout the past 2 months, we've conducted interviews with all 11 candidates that Harrisonburg saw on the ballot today. So I couldn't be more honored to be providing JMU with live coverage of the 2021 gubernatorial election.
Yeah, and tonight should be interesting because from what I understand, this election is quite literally neck and neck.
Yes, and we've heard that Tony Wilt, actually, we have some results about Tony Wilt with Regine in the Election Center. Regine?
We are receiving unofficial results from the 26th District's House of Delegates race, with Republican incumbent Tony Wilt winning a little over 60% of the vote. This performance this year has been comparatively better than how he performed in 2017 and 2019, winning about 54 to 55% of the vote against Democrat Brett Finnegan. Tony Wilt did win about 80% of the vote in Rockingham County's polling precincts, and earlier this semester, our team did have the opportunity to speak with Wilt about his plans for the 26th district.
Virginia's 26th district will have the chance to vote for the representative to the House of Delegates. While local attorney Bill Helsley has hopped on the Democratic ticket, he faces off against Republican incumbent Tony Wilt, who is once again throwing his hat in the ring for a 6th term. Wilt is a lifelong Shenandoah Valley resident and is president and general manager of his family's business, Superior Concrete Incorporated, which has served the local community for over 65 years.
I firmly believe that everyone should give back to their community in some form or fashion as they're able. Okay, and so I've been fortunate enough to be able to give back to my community in this capacity. And so that's my motivator. That's the thing that I continue to run for re-election, because I feel like I've done a good job representing the 26th House District and the state of Virginia. And I just want to continue to avail myself to try to make the 26th House District a better place to live.
Despite holding a seat since 2010, local enthusiasm for Mr. Wilt is still as strong as ever.
One thing I like about Tony, he's very down to earth. He'll talk to you. He doesn't talk down to you. It's not about him. In fact, he's very humble. I would call him humble.
The citizens that I talk to, and I'm convinced that it holds true. Citizens want some basic assurances for themselves from their government. They want an opportunity to better themselves. They want a good job environment. They want to be able to up their position in life, if you will, whatever that looks like for them. And I want them to have the freedom to do so.
All right, and we now do have confirmation that Tony Wilt has clinched the 26th district, and we will be tossing it over to Rebecca Cutzinger, who is live at the watch party. Rebecca, how's it going on over there?
Thanks, guys. I am here at Tony Wilt's campaign watch party where the positive vibes are very strong. I am here with Tony Wilt's field director, Wyatt Levin. Tell me, Wyatt, how are you feeling?
I feel great, I have to say. The New York Times started with all the races and we had a lot of momentum in the last few weeks. Really excited, a lot of very positive feedback today. I'm celebrating this way.
All right, thank you. What do you think that Tony's biggest asset was coming into the season?
I think Tony's biggest asset is just the people person. He spent so much of this campaign out door knocking on his own. 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had knocked like 3,000 doors on his own. So I don't even know the numbers up to at this point. So Tony has always been really good at going out, talking to people, understanding their issues, and listening to them, responding. And I think that's one of his biggest strengths.
All right, thank you so much. That's all for now, guys. Back to you.
All right, we now like to throw it over to our election panel. We have the representative from the College Democrats, Aidan Caston, and the representative from the College Republicans, Juliana McGrath. It's an honor to have both of you here. So, Juliana, you can start us off. What are your opinions on how the 26th District's House of Delegates race went?
Well, I voted for Tony Wilt. I am a proud constituent of his. He's done some really, really good things for the 26th district, and I'm excited to see what he continues to do. I think he will be a great advocate for students in the House of Delegates, and I'm very proud that he won tonight.
And Aidan, do you feel that Helsley could have done anything differently in contrast to prior candidates to have clinched this win?
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell at this stage of the race, at the reporting right now, I should say, because we don't have the exact down ballot results as completely at this stage. It's quite possible he could have moderated himself more, maybe sort of leaned in a little bit. This is a lean Republican district. It's always going to be hard to win in this sort of environment, but at least at this stage, it's hard to tell. But I would say his biggest mistake might have been at this stage is he probably didn't get enough student vote out, and it's difficult, it's hard, but student vote is really what would ever flip this race, and I don't think he had it at the results he needed. I don't think he had it out at the results necessary.
Yes, well, in regards to the governor's candidates, Craig, in regards to the governor's race, any political analyst will tell you that this has been one of the closest, tensest governor races in decades. As you see, the candidates that we currently have are Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin, as well as third-party candidate Princess Blanding. So to get an idea of who these candidates are, let's look back at when both McAuliffe and Youngkin both visited Harrisonburg 2 months ago.
Last Friday, Rockingham County's agricultural community was treated to a visit by Republican candidate for Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, and several locals came out to show their support. Joined by his running mate, Winston Sears, the two discussed a variety of topics, ranging from law enforcement to mask mandates.
So that we have the great privilege of going to work for all of you. We, on day one, are going to stand up for law enforcement because they stand up for us.
Youngkin embraced his outsider image, claiming that Virginians are fed up with career politicians like his opponent.
And so tonight we had a rally here and brought everybody together, and this election is literally tied. We're neck and neck, and we're actually seeing voters come out and say, you know what, we want something different.
Democratic candidate Terry McAuliffe, meanwhile, passed through JMU last Wednesday to have a chat with JMU faculty on the implications of COVID in the coming semester.
You know, and I had high school students, they were all good. First month I was a great parent, I want you doing all your stuff that's out in the kitchen so I can see you. You know, second month gone, Peter, my high school senior's up in bed, he's got it up, he's got the phone going, you know, I mean, listen, I get this.
McAuliffe commended JMU for being a leader in managing the pandemic and called on all students to get the new COVID-19 booster shot.
And JMU's been a leader here in the entire area to help everybody. Let it be homeless last time, but we're now going to have to move toward the booster shots. And I really need JMU doing what they did before to continue to do that to keep our citizens safe here in Virginia.
Virginians have until October 12th to register to vote. If there was one thing Harrisonburg was to take away from these past few days, it's to, well, I'll let Mr. Youngkin tell it.
All right, James Madison, you got to get out and vote. We want everybody to get the word out and go vote. Let's go, Virginia.
All right, and we have another race update for you, and we're now going to toss it to Regine to deliver it to you.
So we are reporting that about 60% of precincts are reporting results, with Youngkin leading 56 to 44%, and about 0% of votes have been reported in Richmond so far. McAuliffe is leading in Loudoun County with 55 to 44%, and Virginia suburbs have played a key role in this race, and it appears that Youngkin is really trying to appeal to these suburban voters by emphasizing the issue of critical race theory and education in this race, which is why we're seeing that McAuliffe is presenting an impressive margin in Loudoun County.
Since I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin this evening, I felt I should quickly highlight third-party candidate Princess Blanding, who's running for the New Liberation Party. Now, the interesting thing about Blanding is how much of an outsider she is. Having been an educator all her life, she's a relatively fresh face in politics. However, her motivation for running in this election has managed to strike a chord with several voters across the Commonwealth.
On May 14th, 2018, my brother taught a full day of high school biology, headed towards his home in Henrico near Richmond, and my brother had his very first mental health crisis. My brother was murdered by a Richmond police officer while he was unarmed, completely undressed, and experiencing his very first mental health crisis. And so after my brother's murder, we know that we can't bring him back, but my family and I, along with a growing support base, begged our local and state elected officials to prioritize community care and safety. And so my fight for community care and safety fell on deaf ears, as far as our local and state elected officials. When we went and pleaded with them, they played on their electronic devices. They didn't pay us any mind. They ignored us. I'm not a millionaire like my opponents. I am a working class Virginian who will fight fearlessly for the people to make sure that the best interest for all of us is put first always.
Earlier today, reporter Caleb Brown traveled to local voting locations to gather perspective on how residents voted in this election.
It's Election Day, Dukes. I'm at our first stop of the day at the Convocation Center, where I asked people who they voted for and why.
I voted for Bill Helsley because, first of all, I believe in everything he says. He has some very pragmatic goals for the Valley and for JMU. It's been too long since we've had equitable distribution of state money. And I also worked for his campaign, so that's another reason. So
I voted for Mr. Glenn Youngkin just because I am tired of old politicians running our country. The time for something new, the time for something better is now.
I voted for Youngkin, and I'm a Republican, so that's why I voted for him, really. I don't know what he's about, really.
I voted for Terry McAuliffe because I wanted to continue having all people feel supported in this country, and with what's been going on in Texas, I didn't want that to be a mere image of what's happening here.
I voted for Glenn Youngkin because I believe he is so humble. He's the kindest guy I've ever met.
I voted for Terry McAuliffe, Hala Ayala, Mark Herring, and Bill Helsley.
It's often easy to ignore these local elections, state elections. They're not as talked about nationally as the presidency. But these people have a lot more power over our lives individually than any president ever could.
Especially in Virginia. Virginia is one of two states that have their governor elections the year after a presidential election. So we use Virginia and New Jersey's election results to see how the country is feeling about the current president.
I believe it's important to have your voice heard, whether you're voting for Republican or Democrat.
I think every election is important. I think it's important to make your voice heard. But I think a lot of people don't realize, the presidential elections are big and everybody talks about them, but it's really the local elections that are affecting your day-to-day lives the most.
Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Kayla Brown.
All right, and now we'll start introducing to you more of our on-air team for the night. First, we're going to go live to our reporter Kagan Hughes, who's with the College Democrats Watch Party. Kagan, how's it going on over there?
Thanks, guys. I'm here at the JMU Watch Party for the College of Democrats. And although a lot of them were working the tables, they all turned out today, so it's a great crowd. And I'm here with Aldrich, who is the president of Student Affairs Organization, or PASO. Aldrich, thanks for coming out today and interviewing. So now that it's a really busy time for you guys and it's over, how's it feeling? How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, I'm sure everyone who's been involved, and Dems has really been involved, the Helsley campaign's been involved on campus, registering voters, just making efforts to get civic engagement up with students. So we're probably all relieved it's over and we can just have a rest after a really hectic 2 months.
And speaking of civic engagement, usually college students don't have the biggest turnout unless it's presidential elections. What did you guys do this year that was different to get people voting for the gubernatorial election?
I mean, one thing that I think that's great is we paired with the Helsley campaign and we were registering voters on campus, registering new voters, re-registering people to their addresses here to garner up votes for the local delegate. So we've done a lot to civically engage students, register them, and get them to the polls.
And as results are coming in, not just for the gubernatorial, but the local elections, how is it important for students to know about the local politics that are happening in Harrisonburg?
Well, I mean, for delegate, it's really important because that's really their real life effects from politics is really gonna be shown there. I mean, by electing your delegate, especially in like a college town, they're gonna have a way to influence funds going to the school, infrastructure with the school, with traffic, parking, housing, and everything. So aside from the gubernatorial, like local elections are incredibly important for your daily life, for students and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Yeah, back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Kagan. Well, Ian, you're our political expert. What can we expect from the governor's race this evening?
Well, when I began covering this race 2 months ago, Terry McAuliffe had a comfortable 6-point lead over Glenn Youngkin, eventually jumping to a 7-point lead and proceeded to maintain a 5-7 lead for some time. This caused many Democrats to assume that this wasn't a race to pay attention to. While we have seen a trend since the 70s where Virginia votes for a governor that goes against the party that's in the White House, this was broken by Terry McAuliffe himself when he won our state in 2013 while Obama was still in office. After all, Virginia does seem to be turning bluer and bluer by the year, so it's no wonder that the Democrats were a tad cocky at the beginning of the race. But if you're to look at one of the polls, something interesting happened as the election ventured into November. McAuliffe began the month with a 5-point lead, but that advantage gradually began to drop to the point that the race is now essentially a tie between him and Youngkin. This is why high-level Democrats like Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris came to campaign for McAuliffe 2 weeks back. The Democratic Party's petrified about what could happen in this race. They are so afraid that the Republican Party is going to make an advancement in this race because, to be fair, if they do, it will certainly indicate that 2022 will be a red wave year. I mean, try explaining to your political donors how a state that Joe Biden won by 10.1% all of a sudden has a Republican governor. One may attribute the sudden closeness of this race to how Joe Biden's approval rating has plummeted in the last month, but regardless, all of this is to show that anything can happen tonight. This is far from a decided election, which is why I'm excited to see how the evening progresses.
All righty. Well, I personally just know upon points that Ian just touched on with Youngkin's turnout to everyone in Virginia. He's been very relatable towards everyone in the Commonwealth, and I know Terry McAuliffe's definitely been picking it up towards the end, much like Ian was just saying. And I don't know. What are you thinking, Shelby?
I mean, yeah, McAuliffe has reached out to former Democratic candidates and representatives like Obama and Tim Kaine. And I mean, we've talked about that being kind of like a last-ditch effort to try and pull out voters and maybe voters that he's already had. And I think that this election, as well as the New Jersey election, can kind of represent maybe how the whole United States is feeling about, Joe Biden.
Alrighty, well, looks like we're going to turn it on over to our panel, where we're going to first start off with our Republican representative on their thoughts going into what's the feelings for this governor's race and how and why it's so tight-knit.
Well, I'm seeing two interesting things happening right now. I'm looking at VPAP. The first thing is that Richmond is still at 0% reporting. Richmond is a huge Democratic stronghold. I think that could play a big role in the numbers that we're seeing right now. Second, early voting is still very low. It's still under 50%. So I think it's really hard to tell at this point, how this election could go, how close it could get.
Yeah, at this stage in the race, it's really impossible to tell exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be close no matter what. So this 55 to 45 or roughly around that Youngkin has, we'll see it start to narrow as early vote counting comes in and Richmond delivers what I assume will be a strong blow to Youngkin's lead. So we can't tell. As far as for how to ascribe this to the national stage, Trying to read too much into it is somewhat difficult because, yes, it will indicate perhaps unpopularity for Biden in the short term, but as COVID dissipates, as things like that begin to pick up, it might gain. So this is probably the weakest Democrats are going to be. So it's hard to ascribe that long term, but it is certainly a sign to Democrats that things would need to change if it does go to Youngkin in the end.
Mm-hmm. Something else that I've noticed, being from the Richmond area, there were a lot of Princess Blanding yard signs in downtown Richmond and the surrounding area. So I'm also interested to see how that will play in with the numbers as they start to come in.
Yeah, Blanding will certainly not be entirely liked very much by Democrats if she plays a spoiler effect. From what I saw, didn't seem like she was making up enough votes to change the lead, but like I said, Youngkin's lead's probably going to narrow, so we'll see what happens. She might play a spoiler effect in the end, and that would win her no friends from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens as more numbers come in, especially with the early vote numbers. I think, at this point, that could play a huge role in what ends up happening.
Yeah, early vote might be the deciding factor, and it was pretty high this year, so we'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, now we're going to toss it over to Rebecca, who's still out at Tony Wilt's watch party, where we expect Tony Wilt to say a few words.
In the Republican Party, he is put in. I'm guessing I also want to thank this group over here, the JMU College Republicans. So all the college Republicans went on vacation. They haven't done anything this.
All right, well, thanks, Rebecca. We'll keep checking in with you throughout the evening. While the governor's race has captured national attention, some locals are left wondering exactly how this election will affect Harrisonburg. One thing's for sure, though, Glenn Youngkin has paid this area a fair amount of attention in the last few months, with his rallies attracting quite a turnout. I'm currently standing in front of Rockingham County Administration Center, where locals are waiting to hear Republican candidate for governor Glenn Youngkin speak. While the event is just beginning, it's already shaping up to be a festive day. Now, Mr. Wilt, why should JMU cast their vote for Glenn Youngkin this upcoming November?
Glenn Youngkin has their future in mind. He's seen what's happened in the past, 4 years, and then 4 years prior to that. It has not been good for the state of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin has an eye on the economy. He's going to grow the economy and make sure that when you come out of JMU that you have a job and all the other students that are there.
I tell you why you ought to vote for Glenn Youngkin, and that's because he's the guy that's going to create the most chances for opportunities for you all when you finish school.
Virginians do not follow. We lead. We've been doing it from the founding of this great country. Our country's history is Virginia's history. And our country's future is rested right now in Virginia's president. Right now.
So, Mr. Youngkin, why should JMU Dukes go out this November and cast their vote for you?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges in Virginia is that our economy is stalled out and our job machine isn't turned on. We've only created 44,000 jobs over the last 8 years. So JMU students should come vote for me because I know how to get the economy moving, how to create jobs so that the opportunities that all of you want to build great lives here in Virginia, not going someplace else, we'll go build together. My plan lays out a way to build 400,000 new jobs, foster 10,000 startups, to actually have an economy that grows faster than the states around us as opposed to losing out to the states around us. So the future of Virginia is going to be one of growth, of job opportunities, and absolutely having Virginia be the best place in America to live and work and raise a family, and I want every JMU student to be fully part of it.
And I believe we have a race update now with Regine Ara in the Election Center. Regine.
So we are seeing that all three races for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general are all practically the same, with all three Republicans leading 55 to 45%. And this is showing that Mark Herring's incumbency has not pushed the results in his favor. And we are saying that this is indicative of the effect of Biden's poll numbers on this race, as well as Republicans' enthusiasm to reclaim Virginia's governor mansion. We are seeing that Richmond is still at 0% reporting for results, Fairfax County is at 10%, and Norfolk is at 20%. We'll update you more as we get results.
Well, while no one can predict how this evening will continue to go, one thing is for certain: no matter who wins, Virginia's about to make history by electing its first female of color as their lieutenant governor.
While the race between Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin has been at the forefront of the news, the candidates for lieutenant governor have been campaigning just as hard. As the second highest ranking official in Virginia, it is the lieutenant governor's responsibility to preside over the Senate as president, to make final decisions in the case of a tie, and to take over the role of governor in the instance they are no longer able to serve. On the ballot this year are two women of color, Democrat Hala Ayala and Republican Winsome Sears. Ayala went from working in gas stations as a single mom to earning a degree in cybersecurity and working for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. She was elected to the House of Delegates to represent the 51st District, beating incumbent Rich Anderson in 2017. She's in favor of stricter gun laws, abortion, and making higher education more accessible.
Healthcare is on the forefront of my mind, and also economics. And we want to make sure that every student, every individual who wants to go to college can, and not be burdened by debt.
Republican Winsome Sears migrated to the U.S. as a young girl, where she'd later serve as an electrician in the Marines. In 2002, she was the first Black Republican to be elected to the General Assembly and is now a national chairperson for Black Americans to re-elect Trump. She's an advocate for gun rights, pro-life legislation, election integrity, and ensuring students a quality education.
Well, my number one issue is education. The money is there. It's just got to come down from the higher echelons into the classroom. We are one Virginia, and we've got to learn to live together.
No matter the outcome of tonight, Ayala or Sears will make history as the first woman of color to hold a statewide position in Virginia and serve as lieutenant governor. Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Kayla Brown.
And thank you, Kayla. And now we are going to go over to Ian about other candidates that we should look out for tonight.
Well, Shelby, while everyone's eyes have been on the governor's race, the second biggest name on Virginia's ballot are the candidates for Attorney General, which are Democratic incumbent Mark Herring and Republican newcomer Jason Miyares. Now, Mark Herring has served as Attorney General since 2014 and is now seeking a third term. And if he wins tonight, Herring would be one of the longest-serving Attorney Generals in the history of the Commonwealth. Jason Miyares, on the other hand, is a relatively fresh face who is the first Cuban-American ever elected to the Virginia General Assembly, and now aspires to be the first Virginia Attorney General in 225 years to be the child of an immigrant. Miyares, a JMU alum, had a chat with us about his campaign.
In addition to my passion about my alma mater and how I think James Madison is just a hidden gem in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I think they want an attorney general that I think is going to call balls and strikes, is going to try to take politics out of the office. It's going to be passionate about both keeping Virginians safe, standing up for victims, making sure we're removing those kind of regulatory burdens that are barriers of entries for our small business entrepreneurs. Also being the voice of the people of Virginia, the attorney for the people of Virginia, so both also defending their civil rights and human rights. I think for all those reasons for that, but I can promise you that there'll be an attorney general that'll be on campus a lot while I'm in office, just because of my deep love and affection for the school.
Alrighty, and now we're going to toss it back over to our political correspondent, Ian Welfley, on an update for the Treasurer and Commissioner of Revenues race.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. The last candidates we'll go over tonight are the ones for Harrisonburg City Treasurer and the Commissioner of Revenue. While many don't know who they are, all Harrisonburg residents saw their names on the ballot while voting today, and both just so happen to be alumni of JMU. While much has been spoken of the candidates for governor and the House of Delegates, these are far from the only names early voters found on Harrisonburg's ballot. Two notable ones are Jeffrey Schaefer and Karen Rose, candidates for City Treasurer and the Commissioner of Revenue.
So the City Treasurer, the main responsibilities of the Treasurer is to collect all monies that come to the city. Secondly, I've got to keep that money safe. And then thirdly, we are responsible for all disbursements.
The Commissioner of Revenue is constitutional officer, and we are considered the chief assessor for the city. So we're handling a lot of different taxes throughout the year. We help with state income taxes. So we're kind of a more local level for people to come in and talk about their state income taxes and try to help.
While both run unopposed, they feel it's important for voters to at least know the faces behind the names on the ballots this November.
I will continue to do what I've done for 13 years, and that's maintain good customer service. That's maintain the safety and the accountability of the city funds that we see and work with every day.
We're working towards trying to get the online filing, which will be a big plus for probably more of the businesses than individuals, but we don't really have individuals file personal property with us like they used to in the past.
Despite graduating decades ago, they still remain true to their JMU roots and only ask one thing of current Dukes.
Hey JMU, I am one of you. I'm a fellow alum from the class of 1990, and I would definitely appreciate it if you're registered to vote here in Harrisonburg, go out and vote Jeff Schaefer for treasurer. Thank you.
Hey, JMU, come out and vote. Go Dukes.
All right, we'd like to briefly shift gears here and touch upon New Jersey's gubernatorial election, which is the only other governor's race that 2021 has seen. This particular election is surprisingly relevant to our school, as JMU has over 1,200 students enrolled from New Jersey, which is roughly 6% of our student body. Regina is in the election center to give us an update on this race.
So while we are waiting for more results to report for Virginia, we do have a key race update for New Jersey's gubernatorial race, with Democratic incumbent Murphy leading 57-43 against Republican Chitterelli. And only 10% of polls are reporting this, so this is fairly early in the race. Something interesting to note is that a Democratic governor has not won re-election in New Jersey in the past 44 years. So we are waiting to see if Murphy is able to break this trend. Back to you on the studio.
Thank you, Regine. Our reporter Kayla Brown walked around campus last week asking students and faculty questions about the 2021 gubernatorial election. Here's what they had to say.
When it's not a presidential election year, voter turnout can be significantly low, but state and local elections are just as important because that legislation directly impacts us. I'm on the quad today to see just how much students know about what's on the ballot. So, do you know who the candidates for governor are?
Yes, Glenn Youngkin and...
Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe.
Ralph Northam? No, that's our current governor.
McAuliffe and Youngkin.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Terry McAuliffe and oh my goodness, I just forgot the other candidate because I voted for McAuliffe.
Glenn Youngkin. I'm blanking.
Terry McAuliffe. Do you want to take a shot at lieutenant governor candidates?
No.
Do you know who the candidates for lieutenant governor are?
I see the face. One of them I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yes, but I don't remember their names right now.
Do you know who you're going to vote for and why?
I'm undecided right now, but my parents own a business, so that kind of plays into it, with laws regarding business, so.
And why did you vote for McAuliffe?
Well, my family always raised me Democrat, and I believe in Democrat values, and I think that we need someone from Virginia who knows what they've been doing.
I think COVID is a really big issue right now, and I really have to vote for the person who actually is going to be telling people to go get vaccinated and following the science.
Do you guys know who you're going to vote for?
Yes.
Do you want to explain why?
Probably because my parents are voting for them.
Do you plan on voting?
Sure.
Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Kayla Brown.
All right, I just wanted to quickly throw it back to our panel. So, as you probably know, Loudoun County Public Schools has been under fire recently for mask mandates and critical race theory, which has been a hot button issue in this race. And there was also a recent controversy regarding a girl allegedly being sexually assaulted by a skirt-wearing male in a girl's bathroom. Do you feel that this will have any particular impact on voter turnout in Northern Virginia?
I do. I think through the election and, in Virginia as a whole, education has been something that's been looked at very recently, not just because of COVID and the different mandates in schools, but just, how important it's become. And I think everything that's happening in Loudoun County is either it's driving people out to vote, either, for or against Glenn, and I think it has been very important.
I think it certainly played an important role too. I don't think you can deny the fact that there has been debate within Loudoun County. I'm from Loudoun County, so I sort of know it and understand the area. I don't think there's a way you could deny that there's been a debate there that certainly transcended simply neighborly talking into political lines and political divisions, and I think it's going to also increase turnout. I think that the school board meetings have certainly raised the tensions, and high tensions, high politics, that'll also increase turnout. There's no way it doesn't. So in general, yes, I do agree with you on this. as far as the partisan effect of it, I think it's probably encouraged some people to vote Republican. My personal understanding is that there hasn't been any critical race theory taught in Loudoun County, but I think there has been statements that it has, and even if they aren't entirely true, I think it has certainly increased Republican turnout and helped galvanize the Republicans within Loudoun County. As we're seeing, McAuliffe's lead is not what Northam's was in Loudoun County, or Biden's for that matter.
I agree. I'm not quite sure if or where CRT is being taught in Loudoun County schools because I'm not from there, but I think, hearing about that is kind of scaring the Republican base in a way. That's something that's driving them out. Voter turnout was very high this year in Loudoun, and I think, part of that could be that people are hearing about CRT and they don't like it and they want to do something to stop it. And, we're so blessed in this country. If there's something we don't like, we can vote and elect a candidate that will stop it. And so I think that's what's happening here.
I certainly agree. I think it has done basically everything you did. I think we're in general agreement actually about this one, which is rare for two people like us.
Yeah, it's nice though.
Yeah.
All right, let's check back in with our reporter Kagan Hughes, who is still over at the College Democrats watch party. Kagan, what's going on over there?
Hey guys, so we are actually now in the parking lot of Pheasant Hill. We were currently, when you first heard from me last, in the watch party of the JMU Democratic College. But after they decided to do a lot of tabling today to get a lot of voters out, they decided to call it an early night. The energy was a little bit tired, and as the results were coming in, it just didn't look as promising to them. It felt like there's not a lot to update, but we will be going live here in Pheasant for the rest of the show. So we'll be back to you guys in the studio where you can hear more from me later on.
All right, we're now going to toss it back to Regine, who has another election update for us.
So we are seeing that McAuliffe is underperforming in Virginia suburbs, which could be a concern for Democrats. We are seeing that he is reporting at 54% in Henrico County, with only 3 precincts not reporting quite yet. This compares at a lower number compared to Northam 4 years ago at 61%. This is showing that Youngkin was able to appeal to some suburban voters and sway them his way by covering issues like CRT and education. Back to y'all in the studio.
All right, thanks, Regine. Well, as you can probably tell, this governor's race has been a roller coaster, with supporters from both sides of the political aisle eagerly awaiting what would come next. One of the most notable events was the second governor's debate, which took place in Northern Virginia last September. Breeze TV Politics was on the scene to provide firsthand coverage.
We are currently waiting for the second governor's debate to start between candidates Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin. Let's go inside and check it out. What would you like to see tonight from Glenn Youngkin?
I just want to see Glenn Youngkin come out strong, just go over the basic conservative values, and I hope he does really well tonight.
I went to Herron's initial conference on the legalizing cannabis for Virginia. I thought he was going to run for governor. I was kind of backing him, but I'll go for Terry before I go for Youngkin, because the Washington Post spelled out that Youngkin is basically a prohibitionist.
So I'm currently behind the scenes where the magic happens. They're setting up for the debate right now. So let's see how it goes.
So let's begin by quickly covering the rules for today's event. The debate will last 1 hour, and will begin with 90-second opening statements from each candidate.
My fellow Virginians, tonight I'll share my vision for lower taxes, for the best jobs, for the best schools.
I'm so excited to be with everybody tonight. I was honored to be your 72nd governor.
So the debate just ended, and now we're waiting for people to come out and see what they thought about the performance tonight.
I think it was a good debate overall, but Governor McAuliffe made his points and made it clear. And we saw a stark difference between an experienced governor who knows what he's talking about versus a newcomer who's still figuring things out.
I really think Youngkin is super strong in presenting himself as a candidate. His words really resonated with voters.
And is there a specific point of the debate tonight that was particularly impactful to you?
Yeah, I would say probably when Prince is landing. she spoke out. I think that was really surprising. I was not expecting her to do that. I know that she was like, I guess, a third party, really not really a third party, but she was running in the election.
I should be up on the stage. I represent working class Virginia. You can call me what you want, but the reality is I am the very first black female to be on the stage and to be on the ballot, excuse me.
So I'm on the stage right now. The debate just ended. As you can see behind me, they're all packing it up. It was a very exciting night from both sides. Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Aiden Height.
The governor's race between Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin has managed to attract national attention, with high-profile figures like Bill O'Reilly and Stephen Colbert providing their input. Adding to the election's limelight was President Barack Obama, who visited Richmond a week ago to campaign for Terry McAuliffe at VCU in a last-ditch effort to compel Democrats to get out and vote blue.
I'm currently here on VCU's campus for the Terry McAuliffe rally, where former President Barack Obama is expected to endorse the Democratic candidate for governor. Breeze TV will be here all day keeping you updated. It's shaping up to be an exciting day.
What do you feel like McAuliffe needs to do to get ahead in the race?
Look, just keep putting the work. Apply pressure, and more pressure on this election.
Just one last question from me. Your 73rd governor of the Commonwealth. Are you ready to elect Terry McAuliffe as the 74th governor?
Considering Virginia is a blue state, are you surprised with how close the race is?
I'm actually hoping that everyone will see the seriousness of this and understand how important it is to get out and vote.
With Terry in office, we can work together to lead the nation in things like preventing gun violence, lowering the cost of health care, and holding Big Pharma accountable for prescription drug prices.
What would you like to tell college students about getting out to vote?
Well, your vote is your voice, and make sure that your voices are heard. And it's really important that you spread the word, get your votes out, and that way I know that if young people come out in large numbers, Democrats are going to win, and we're going to keep Virginia moving forward.
This election is about so many things, but the most important thing it's about is, can we have a small d democracy, and can everyday people participate? That is what's at stake, and that's why I'm so glad to be here for this ticket.
This is the future of our Commonwealth. Together, we will keep Virginia blue, and we will move this great Commonwealth forward.
Do you think Obama's presence today will have an impact on the election?
Absolutely. I think he certainly drives out turnout in Richmond, and it showed for Northam, so I think we're definitely looking at a good win after Obama's visit today.
It is good to be back in Virginia. I could not be happier that Terry's back on the ticket. He's persuasive. And the reason I couldn't be happier is because I know he will make you proud as governor because he's already done it. He did it the last time. And you know this about Terry, he knows how to work hard. This guy is the Energizer Bunny.
As you can see behind me, everyone's packing up and heading home. Today was an extremely eventful day with a ton of big names who came out to campaign. Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Kayla Brown.
So, Craig, do you think that Obama coming and backing Terry McAuliffe had any impact in this election?
Honestly, not really. I definitely personally saw it as a last movement effort on Terry's part. I thought that Youngkin was hitting those points of Virginia very consistently, coming back to Harrisonburg multiple times. And it definitely seemed fairly late in the game. And all these names kind of just like came back into Richmond all to reconvene for that one last hurrah. So it was definitely interesting. What do you think, Ian?
Well, Craig, something interesting to note are moderate voters, because they are who will decide this election. The tactics of both McAuliffe and Youngkin throughout their campaigns have been to paint the other as an extremist in order to scare independent voters away. This is why Youngkin has kept Donald Trump at an arm's length, not wanting to risk being associated with the president that lost Virginia by 10 points last year. However, different events throughout the election have been used by McAuliffe to paint Youngkin as a Trump hybrid, one of the biggest being a rally held in Richmond a few weeks ago.
Last Wednesday, Donald Trump and Steve Bannon headlined the Take Back Virginia rally, campaigning for Republican gubernatorial candidate Glenn Youngkin. The rally took place in Glen Allen, Virginia. Conservatives from around the state gathered to express their views on the upcoming election.
Why do we believe that Youngkin is best for Virginia? Because he is pro-parent. When you think of what's happening with the Loudoun County School Board and the issues there, parents are not terrorists.
I think Youngkin is uniquely qualified as a business, owner.
This is a winnable race for governor.
definitely winnable with, Winsome Sears for lieutenant governor, happens to be a friend of mine. And so we're at, 20 days out, and it's a time to rally and encourage people.
Former President Trump created a stir before the rally in a written statement. If we don't solve the presidential election fraud of 2020, Republicans will not be voting in 22 or 24. During the event, Bannon also contributed to firing up the crowd.
Take your talent and apply your talent now. Apply your talent to the political process or to the cultural process. If you do that, you're a force multiplier. And let me tell you something, we're winning, and they know it.
What garnered the most attention at the rally, however, was when the crowd participated in a pledge of allegiance to a flag associated with the January 6th insurrection.
I also want to invite Kim from Chesapeake. She's carrying an American flag that was carried at the peaceful rally with Donald J. Trump on January 6th.
This immediately sparked outrage from the likes of Terry McAuliffe and Governor Ralph Northam, who insisted that Youngkin denounce the act. Youngkin initially dodged a question regarding this, but later released a statement condemning the display as weird and wrong.
I wasn't involved, and so I don't know. But if that is the case, then we shouldn't pledge allegiance to that flag. And oh, by the way, I've been so clear, there is no place for violence. None in America today.
As you can see, it was a very eventful night here at the Take Back Virginia rally, where conservatives all over the state came to express their concerns about the upcoming election. Reporting for Breeze TV, I'm Regine Aranazari.
All right, well, thank you very much. And so we'll now throw it back to our panel. So what's the bigger picture here? What are the implications of the results that we're currently seeing? What does this mean for the 2022 midterms? What does this say about how President Biden is viewed within Virginia?
I think, currently with Youngkin in the lead, I think that says a lot about, how people feel about Joe Biden, how people really care about the issues. It's been great to see so many people come out and vote. Glenn has had thousands of people at his rallies. Voter turnout is usually a little bit lower in rural areas. And so I think that he has really inspired those people to come out and vote too.
Yeah, I think it's certainly not a good sign for Biden, to put it lightly. If he is to be maintaining this sort of this sort of polls, it does show bad signs for Democrats in the 2022 midterms. One of the most interesting questions to me, though, is the Donald Trump question. Is if Youngkin distancing himself from Donald Trump made a large impact, which I think it did, and I think it shows that if the party continues in the Trump direction, while it'll work in some areas, it probably won't work in Virginia, and that might throw certain national elections into more doubt. But if we go back to the Biden poll numbers, I do think this is going to be one of the lower points of them. As COVID recedes, as the supply chain crisis moves on and gets better, I think his poll numbers will generally go up. So in the bigger picture, this might just be a strike at a weak time for the Democrats, which would also have problems for the Republican Party, because if they can, or at least the Virginia Republican Party, because if they can only win on the weak points, what does that mean in the long term? Because the Democrats won't always have these poll numbers, and at the very least, they probably won't always have a president in the White House. And if they need a president in the White House with a 43% approval rating to win, that'll make things difficult for the Virginia Republicans moving forward.
I agree. That's a good point you bring up. And I think, the biggest thing is that, even though this is a state election, it's really based on how people are feeling nationally. Virginia it's a very large commonwealth. We have a large population. We're so close to DC. There are so many different people here that think so many different things. And so I think currently, our citizens are showing us how they're feeling, but you do bring up good points about the future and, what this could mean going forward. It's a really good question. Do, at this point, Republicans need a Democrat in the White House to win? I think, for that, only time will tell, and, maybe the final results of this election will help us get a sense of that.
That's true. If Youngkin wins by a fairly large margin, well, that's good news for the Republicans, because it means he could probably shave a few points. But as it seems, to me at least, he's not going to win by more than maybe 2%. And that's a pretty high call for him, to be honest. And that would not be great news for the Virginia Republicans, because it would show they need an unpopular incumbent to ever even grace the Virginia governor's mansion, much less secure a standing victory which they can go, okay, now we're going to make massive changes with.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up some interesting points, and I think, as far as that goes, only time will tell. We'll be able to see a pattern in future elections and, see where we're headed as a Commonwealth.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, thanks, you two. We're getting another race update, so we're going to toss it over to Regine Aranazari in the election center.
So we are seeing that Republican Glenn Youngkin and Winsome Sears are both leading the Democrats with 55%, and Republican Jason Miyares is leading Mark Herring with 54%. Democrats are looking towards Norfolk, Richmond, and Fairfax County in order to garner some more votes. Norfolk has reported less than half of their voting precincts, with McAuliffe leading 70 to 30%. Richmond has only reported less than a third of their votes, with McAuliffe leading 65 to 32%, and Fairfax has reported about 40% of the vote, with McAuliffe leading 68 to 31%. McAuliffe is performing at a similar rate as Ralph Northam in Fairfax, Virginia, but these numbers could change. Back to you all in the studio.
All right, thanks, Regine. So delving back into analysis on this year's tight race, let's briefly take a look at an election map of Virginia. From this, we can get a better understanding of what we're dealing with tonight. So as we've said, McAuliffe seems to be underperforming this evening. That's not complete yet, but as of yet. So these Northern Virginia suburbs, this is where Virginia is changing and where the election will ultimately be decided. Virginia can be seen as sort of a case study for what's happening in other parts of America like Texas. Now, Craig and Shelby, factors such as young voters moving in and Latino populations exploding have changed these counties significantly in the last 10 to 15 years. While Virginia was once a reliable red state that voted Republican in every presidential election from 1968 until 2004, this changed in 2008 with Barack Obama, leading Virginia to become a purple state bordering on blue. Now, as you can see, the percentage of registered voters in Virginia that identify as Democrat and Independent both outnumber Republicans. This is why Glenn Youngkin has been cozying up to independent voters throughout his campaign, because he knows getting their vote is his best chance in a blue state. And where do independents live? The suburbs. So going back to the map here, McAuliffe's victory back in 2013, you can see a bunch of blue up in the northern areas there. But if we were to go back to when the Republicans won in 2009, watch those northern counties. That's what happened. So throwing back to our panel, do you feel that this northern area is where Virginia is just now decided in general, or should our eyes be turned elsewhere?
I think, Northern Virginia is definitely a very important area. It's highly popular. I mean, you're from there. It's highly populated. Like I said earlier, it's so close to D.C. I feel like where Northern Virginia falls definitely plays a role in where the entire Commonwealth will fall. The more rural areas, the farther south in Virginia you go, it's less populated, so they do play less of a role. I think specifically in this election, an area of importance is going to be the Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads area. Glenn has done a lot down there. It's another one of Virginia's highly populated areas. And I don't think this year we should put them on the back burner. I think, we should focus down there and see what's going on in that area as well.
I think that's a good point. I think that's a solid point. As far as Northern Virginia goes, it is seeming to be playing an important role so far in this election. Glenn Youngkin is Terry McAuliffe is roughly 5 to 6% underperforming Joe Biden in Loudoun, for example. He's about the right place in Fairfax and Arlington County. So that might be the controversy that we were talking about earlier playing a role there. So that shaving there is really hurting him, it seems right now, at least from winning a solid victory, if even at this point winning a victory at all. But I do think Southern Virginia does play an important role, obviously. If nothing else, as we were saying earlier, we didn't have the Richmond ballots. Sometimes it's not about if a place goes red or blue. It's about how red or how blue it goes that will decide an election.
I think that's a good point as well. And I think, it also just goes back to where are the voters turning up? That's important too, because, that could also play a role in which areas are more red or which areas are more blue. It's just depending on how many voters are coming out to the polls, who's being inspired, what issues are inspiring them.
Yeah, that's obviously a good point. Turnout always matters. Nova had great turnout. So did most of Virginia. I think the close polls really brought anyone out. More than any arguments made by the candidates, the close polls probably brought the most people out to vote.
Mm-hmm. I think, it's one thing to hear a message from a candidate, but it's another thing to see numbers and to see how close it is. And, we're lucky enough that we all have the right to vote for whoever we want to in this country. And, I'm glad a lot of people are using that and are using their voice to speak up for what they believe in this year.
Definitely.
All right, thanks you two. Well, we're now going to toss it over to Rebecca on audio regarding a new update over at the Tony Wilt Watch Party.
Alrighty. Well, lots of eventful things that we've seen throughout tonight. I know it was interesting cutting from New Jersey, but definitely we're still waiting on more of those governor's election results. And I just want to get your thoughts, Shelby. Like, what have you been taking away from tonight?
I mean, I think, the New Jersey and Virginia governor election is going to kind of reflect what the nation's thinking right now as far as Joe Biden, and the Republican Party has the opportunity to retake the Senate as the midterm elections happen next year. So I'm interested to hear, do you think that the impact of this election will kind of reflect what the nation is thinking?
Yeah, it's definitely hitting on that path. I know personally I like to watch a lot of late night, like Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, and all those guys. They've been mentioning that this has been a huge kind of turning point over. So we're hitting a lot of those moderate points. I believe, like we've been talking all night about education, I know that both of these candidates want to put money into the system for better teacher pay. Specifically, Terry McAuliffe wants to put $2 billion back into the education so teacher salaries above the national average. I know Glenn Youngkin has mentioned this, but not into those specifics, I believe. So it's interesting how they're hitting on these moderate topics. Like, you know of any more? Or?
Yes, I mean, with education, I know Youngkin, he's really pushing for special education programs and new innovative centers within schools, and is pushing for that, for students to be able to prepare for college in K through 12 schools, or not college, but a career after school. And I think that jobs in general is a good, an important topic for both candidates, as they're both pushing to increase jobs. I believe Youngkin was interested in putting out 400,000 new jobs in Virginia.
Alrighty. Well, we are receiving an update from Regine, so we're going to cut back over to her.
So we are receiving word that there are still 95 provisional ballots in Harrisonburg that need to be reviewed, so election results will not be official in Harrisonburg until about Friday. We also do have another update about New Jersey's gubernatorial race. While it is still too early to call, with only 21% of precincts reporting, Democratic incumbent Murphy is leading Republican Chitterelli with by 53% to 46%. Back to you all in the studio.
All right, thank you, Regine. Well, for our final segment tonight, we have a very special guest, Jamie political science professor Marty Cohen, who's here to discuss the election this evening. Dr. Cohen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what are your general opinions regarding how this night has progressed?
Well, in looking at the exit polling, to me, this looks like a continuation of the 2020 presidential election with two big differences. One, Donald Trump is not on the ballot, which keeps Democrats who might be reluctant this year to vote away from the polls. And also, Joe Biden has put in a very dismal 10 months in the White House.
I see. And do you think that Glenn Youngkin's been playing it very smart by appealing to moderate voters by trying to distance himself by Donald Trump while simultaneously embracing some of his qualities?
Yeah, I mean, dual messaging is something that we've seen for a long time in political campaigns, where you say one thing to one group, one thing to another group. But the fact is we have videotape and we have audio tape, and so those messages should get to every audience. But people are hearing what they want to hear, and right now it looks pretty good for Youngkin.
I see. And why do you feel that Virginia has had a consistent trend of frequently voting against the president that's within the White House?
Yeah, so this is a repeat of 93, of 2009. It's hard for presidents at the beginning of their term, and especially Democratic presidents have struggled when they've gotten into the White House in 92 and in 2008 after years of Republicans. And so I think people are dissatisfied, people want to change, and don't give the presidents a chance to do what they were put there to do.
Excellent. And so just another question here. What do you think has been the biggest issue within this election that's going to be the greatest determining factor in who will ultimately seize this victory?
Well, I think the culture wars are alive and well in Virginia, and I think that battleground has been in the schools, and certainly Youngkin's gotten some traction with talking about things like critical race theory and transgender use of bathrooms, and regardless of whether those things are legitimate issues, the voters respond, and he's done well with the Republican base and done pretty well with independents. And I think that, again, these culture war issues are really resonating for people in the absence of Democratic legislative victories so far.
Yeah, and just wrapping it up here, so then what do you think the ultimate effect of this election will be on the 2022 midterms? Because this is an off year. election, just Virginia and New Jersey often get a lot of media attention because they're the election that are outside of the presidential election, so they ultimately determine what will happen in midterms. How do you think that, based off what you've seen in this race, it'll impact midterms next year?
Well, I think it's up to the Democratic Party and what they do at the national level. If they're able to score some sort of legislative victory, if they're able to get a handle, on COVID, and that improves a bit, they could probably turn it around by the time we get to Election Day next year. But I wouldn't bet on it. I think the Democrats might be headed for another long night a year from now.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time we have. This has been Breeze TV's coverage of the 2021 gubernatorial election. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure.